Hello, everybody. Welcome to, I think, a podcast now. Now, this is not a podcast. Neither is this a thing that we might be doing in either my channel or I don't know where this is gonna be. We are now talking about the latest Disney Funko Pops released by ways of very interesting advertising that I actually have never seen before. They actually made a whole show just to sell at least 19 different Funko Pops, which I think has never been done before. But seeing that this is just a WandaVision Funko Pop merchandise machine, the show is actually pretty good if you think about it like that. Don't you think so, Jack?
I do. And also, hi, I'm ClassActJack. If this is going on Matt's channel, which we still haven't fully decided, I'll introduce myself. Hi, I'm ClassActJack. I am a YouTuber. And I also watched Disney's newest Funko Pop commercial, and I enjoyed it for the first 3 episodes.
The reason why we're doing this, I think we can both agree, is that we both wanted to talk about the show because, like most people, we watched the first 3 episodes and got real excited because this looked like it was gonna be something different. But then it wasn't for the next 4 episodes. And then it did like some good things in episode 8 and 9.
My theory of what happened was the people behind WandaVision, they pitched the idea to Disney. They pitched the first 3 episodes, they had the script written, and Disney was like, great, can you please make this show shoulder all of the setup for Phase 4 that we want to do?
And this series is a perfect expansion point for MCU storytelling.
And then Disney's board of businessman writers came in and wrote most of the rest of the episodes.
Well, I feel like you missed an important part in this scenario, is that you believe that Disney gave them a choice.
Not only will Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness connect directly to the events of WandaVision, but it will also connect to the events of our new Spider-Man film coming to theaters December 2021.
We can start talking about the show and we will get to the part of where it's obviously something that Disney really wanted to include because it feels forced and from a different show altogether, you know, Agents of S.W.O.R.D. Point 2. If you want to start talking about the original idea.
Yeah, I'll start by talking about the stuff that really made me interested in the show in the first place. I think a very common criticism of the MCU that has been happening for years is that every movie is just too similar. Like, they all have very standard formulas, they're all shot very similarly. You have some exceptions like Guardians of the Galaxy and kind of Doctor Strange, for one scene. But for the most part, they do tend to feel repetitive. And I'm not trying to be a holier than thou above everyone else. I still love the MCU. I gave Infinity War a 10 out of 10, okay? I'm a shill, I'm a hack. But when WandaVision started, I saw the MCU trying to do something really cool, really interesting, and really new. And that's why I love superhero comics, because they can just dive into any genre, they can do any weird thing, and it will still work. That's what keeps them so alive and persevering for all these decades that they've been going. And so WandaVision starts up, and it's from episode 1, I fell in love with it because I saw exactly what it was trying to do. Oh, it's trying to be an old school sitcom, but me, because I know everything about everything, I could see that it's obviously specifically trying to homage the Dick Van Dyke Show, right down to the house set. Looks exactly like it does in the Dick Van Dyke Show. They even have the weird window separator between the living room and the kitchen. It's shot similarly. The jokes are written similarly to how they would write them in the Dick Van Dyke Show. So that attention to detail made me really interested in the show. Then I saw episode 2. It starts getting shot differently. They're going outside. The shots are a little bit closer. I'm like, oh, this episode is homaging Bewitched. The jokes focused more on trying to hide the powers. I just thought it was really interesting and cool. And then episode 3, I'm sure it was an homage to some 70s show that I've never seen. And I'm sure if I had seen it, I would think it was very clever.
And then everybody's favorite episode, I think, right? Where we leave the Hex and now we're with Monica Rambeau, a character that I actually really liked from episode 1 to 3 and a little bit of episode 4, because her intro is one of the strongest intro in the entire MCU, because we see from the ground perspective what happened during the snap when people are coming back, and then what they do with that character is shoehorn her in as one of the most important people to this plot that have almost no connections to anybody in the plot. And they do that in a very awkward and flimsy way because you have to get excited for Captain Marvel 2. Everybody get excited for Captain Marvel 2 where she's back, guys. Do you remember her? Do you guys remember?
I think episode 4 was when I started to realize, oh, Disney is interfering with this because it's too interesting. Because it kind of gives you all the answers before the season has even reached the halfway point. But I think Monica was the only thing that I was interested in that episode. I was like, yes, okay. Like, she's going to be the saving grace of this episode. And then as the series went on, I just disliked her more and more.
Because of course we did. Because anytime we were given the nice pleasure of seeing Wanda and Vision interacting with each other after episode 3, we constantly got rudely, I must say, interrupted by the S.W.O.R.D plot. Because Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen were putting like some amazing performances anytime they had the chance to have long interactions and conversations with each other. And the show could have just been mostly them having conversations and managing their relationship and dealing with Wanda's grief and the overall problem that she created. But then the show decided to include 3 or 4 other people that essentially split the role of this is the Vision, but the Vision is gone from the show called WandaVision. He's in the background until we need him, because we need to have 9 episodes so we can have setup for Captain Marvel 2, Doctor Strange 2, Spider-Man 3, so many things.
This show was the most I've ever enjoyed watching the MCU versions of Scarlet Witch and Vision. A lot of people, I think, disliked them in prior movies, and I thought that was a little bit silly just because, like, oh, they're the only characters not making silly Marvel jokes all the time. They're actually acting seriously. How boring. They still weren't my favorite characters or anything, but in this show really let them cut loose and shine a little bit more. Paul Bettany, I think especially, is just really dialing up the charm as Vision. We're going into this video assuming everyone has already watched the show. Everyone watching has already watched it.
Well, yeah, but also, like, it was fairly clear that she caused it, which makes some of the decisions later on even weirder. But I'm just saying, man, most people just wanted to see Wanda and Vision having the awkward dinners with their bosses, having a fun magic show, talking about what he does during work, and then, from time to time, we would see that reality slowly crumble and sinister things would start to happen to them because, you know, this is not real and Wanda is a damaged character, so she would have brought some of that damage into her fake reality. But actually, no. I mean, she like mind controls a whole town, and that's really bad, and that would have been more interesting. She kinda is, but she kinda isn't. I feel like they wanted to have both ways and neither. And that's why we have Agnes. Jack, you can talk about Agnes. I know you like her.
I do kind of like Agnes, aka Agatha Harkness. She's well, yeah, like you said, the show did not really need it was me all along type villain. It doesn't need a reverse Flash. Scarlet Witch could have just been the villain. This could all have been her. I mean, it was all her. It's not like Agatha was the one who was creating the town. Scarlet Witch was still the one who was hypnotizing and mind controlling all those people. But I don't think they needed a big supervillain to shoot lasers at her and blow things up in the sky. They even have a sky laser in the last episode. It's a red sky laser, but it's still a sky laser.
Jack, if you don't like one person throwing lasers at another person, I also would like to tell you there were another person shooting lasers at another person with Vision and
anti-Vision.
And also, let's just lie to everybody constantly so we can create artificial hype for the most watched show ever right now. Why? I know they need to sell Funko Pops, but do they need to lie about the possible Funko Pops that they're gonna sell? I understand this is all merchandise, man, but like, why are you lying? Why?
I assume you're talking about the the clickbait article headlines that kept showing up around this show. Like, for example, Paul Bettany saying there was going to be a fun surprise cameo in the last episode. And then he later confirmed that it was him that was the surprise cameo. And to be fair, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he specifically said that to troll the clickbait news article websites. But still, that came across as really disingenuous.
Did you like the part when they also lied about the fake aerospace engineer?
Yeah, that was just nothing. She was just some person. There was nobody. She didn't even get a name, I don't think.
Hey, you know what? That twist would have worked if it was for Wanda. Oh, it wasn't Agnes all along. It was nobody. It was just her. Oh wait, never mind. Can't have that. You need a villain so people can understand that things are not... Wait, they are black and white, but maybe they aren't black and white? We can't decide, it's fine. Just put more S.W.O.R.D in. I'm sure people enjoy S.W.O.R.D. Do you guys like Military Man? I like Military Man. He did nothing wrong until the show needed him to be evil.
Hayward did absolutely nothing wrong. They keep trying to paint him as the villain, but every time they do, I'm just like, no, yeah, he did the correct thing in that situation. Like when he tries to kill Wanda with the missile. I'm like, no, yeah, that's a good thing he did. She was holding an entire town of people captive, and she showed no sign of having any remorse for it, or that she was going to stop anytime soon. Yeah, I think killing her is probably a reasonable thing to do in this situation. They try to show that he was doing a bad thing by trying to bring Vision back to life, but like, no, Vision was still a good guy. Bringing him back to life is an objectively good thing to do. And then the last episode, they kind of realized that they had not had him do anything evil, despite the fact that he was one of their main villains. So he just tries to murder children, which is completely out of character from how he's been written for the entire season up to that point.
Must I say, I didn't fully disagree with his decision there, because this might be a hot take, but those kids can't act. I don't know what it is with Disney, but they keep hiring kids that can't act, and then they put them in prominent roles constantly all the time.
My head feels weird. It's like really noisy. I don't like it.
And that's why one of the things I laughed the most at the finale was how close it reminded me of We Can Be Heroes, the Shark Boy and Lava Girl sequel. And yeah, the kids had worser acting than the kids in We Can Be Heroes. And I think they somehow realized that in episode 5, when the kids were 5 and there were even worse actors. So they just aged them up a little and made them 10, but those kids also couldn't act, and I was really hoping that they would have them age again so we could have at least 15-year-olds that would be much more competent in delivering believable lines. And then we have kids with fake Russian accents, and that was hilarious and made me laugh.
They were Sokovian accents.
They were not Sokovian, Jack. They were incredibly Russian. They might as well have been wearing Russian hats and doing the little dance. Every show needs a little dance, damn it.
That's true.
Well, before we talk about the kids, because let's be honest, they are in the show to create more of a conflict for Wanda, and that makes sense, but we already had that with the Vision, and again, they just keep splitting hairs of what the Vision's role is in his own show besides just being there. So the kids are there so you can feel bad for Wanda when she eventually has to give away the hacks, making her a little bit more heroic at the end. I'll give them that. And the scene that Vision and Wanda shared together in the finale was really nice, really beautiful. The chemistry and conversation that they had was probably one of the strongest moments of the MCU, but they even knew that the kids wouldn't have been able to act at all, so they just closed the door in their face, and we moved on.
Yeah, the kids didn't even get a line in their final scene. I think they just said good night, and then that was it.
They had to go to sleep, Jack. They were tired. They were very tired from existing, okay?
Talking about that final scene with Scarlet Witch and Vision before he disappeared and the hex went away, that showed me that the people behind the show, at least in the end, did get to tell the story they wanted to tell. Because that was, like you said, that was a good scene. That was a well-written, well-acted scene, and it was clear that it was something that they cared about including in the show. But I just wish that Disney had not interfered as much as they clearly did, because if that had happened in episode 6 and this was just a 6-episode miniseries, then it would have had a lot more impact. But instead, everything just gets watered down by all the stuff with S.W.O.R.D and Randall Park and Kat Dennings and the guy, the quote-unquote villain who did nothing wrong.
But I must say that I really enjoyed, I loved, I totally appreciate the level of writing that we got for one of the type of humor in this show. This show has 2 types of humor. The humor and writing that the original writers cared about, and like you said, the other stuff that probably wasn't there from the beginning, like Kat Dennings or Darcy from Thor: The Dark World, and fake Pietro, and fake multiverse, and fake everything. Everything is fake for headlines. We need to make fake headlines. We better lie more. Whoops.
Yeah, the fake Pietro, fake Quicksilver thing, that was probably one of the worst things the show did, was deliberately baiting the people who are expecting the Fox X-Men to get merged into the MCU, and they just said no. That's not what's happened.
But Jack, you can buy a Funko Pop of Quicksilver, so we must confirm that he is for real Quicksilver, because there's a new Funko Pop of him wearing his Halloween outfit.
I can't even put that on the creators of the show. To be fair, I don't think that was a Disney mandate to have the characters wear a bunch of different costumes. I think that was just a happy coincidence that the people.
I'm not blaming them.
Funko
I'm blaming completely just this Disney machine that just consumes this looks like a nice product. What if we just made it worse? And by making it super commercialized, it makes it slightly less magical. Guys, look, it's a really personal drama about Vision and Wanda and her grief. It's more mature. We don't have to tell it to your face that it's about grief, except in episode 4, when we have somebody look basically to the camera and say, this show is about grief. Do you get it? Because we think you're stupid, even though the show shows that in the parts where the creators clearly were able to do what they wanted to do. And that's why episode 8 should have been episode 4. And from time to time, we could have get some insight to what was going on outside. But definitely a lot less than what we got, which was way too much. I think I know this, but Jack, don't you like when superhero shows or superhero movies, they look at the person's costume that looks like the comic costume and they say, wow, that costume is silly?
I do. I like it when they said it in X-Men. I like it when they said it in Incredible Hulk. And my favorites are in the Marvel Netflix shows, where they actually went through the costuming department went through the trouble to actually craft really good looking, really spot on comic accurate costumes for the characters to wear. And then the characters look at themselves in the mirror and say, I look like a complete idiot. Who would ever wear something like this? I love it when that happens.
And then they're like, hey, we know that you're a big dum-dum with a small brain. So here are some lines that I know you're gonna love because we know that your brain is so small. So here, we're gonna have your favorite character, Darcy. She's gonna say, they recast Pietro. Because, they recast Pietro. And that's the joke.
I'll say it right now, though. I am so face blind that I didn't even pick up on what had happened when Darcy said they recast Pietro. I just assumed that the guy who showed up at the door was the same guy from Age of Ultron, because literally every person looks the same to me.
So you must have had a really hard time understanding what was going on when the Vision was fighting each other.
Well, see, that's why I like superhero shows. I like superheroes because they all wear very distinct costumes. These Visions were color coordinated.
I really like that Monica Rambeau constantly jumps to the worst conclusion that she could have possibly made about this guy who's just like, go home, you just came back from the dead. I think that's fair.
He's basically just saying, I don't think you're acting rationally right now because you just came back from the dead and learned that your mom had died of cancer years ago. You're probably not in a good state mentally right now and you should take some time off. Like, that's a reasonable thing for him to say to her. He's the bad guy.
All those scenes with the show pushing him to be the bad guy and nobody caring, and then Monica constantly making decisions that I wish the show would have just said, yeah, she's suffering from PTSD real bad, and these decisions are her not dealing with her problems, very much like Scarlet Witch. But the show never draws that parallel, so it makes the connection between her and Wanda a lot weaker.
The connection would have been a lot stronger if they showed that what she was doing was equally as self-destructive and destructive to the people around her as what Wanda was doing. If one, Hayward wasn't a bad guy, or if she showed like Darcy and Jimmy facing like actual legitimate consequences for going along with her, and she was just like dragging them down into her own self-destructive spiral.
But Jack, there's no consequences because constantly Jimmy Woo and Darcy are arrested and immediately released by the worst security in the world. And Jimmy Woo was a very charismatic guy, and I really wish that we would have just had him as the head of the military trying to just solve this problem. And that would have been the most fresh take in the entire MCU. Was that this one military guy was just trying to do his job for once.
I feel this is like sort of off topic, but didn't you feel like he was written completely differently from how he was written in Ant-Man and the Wasp when he first showed up?
Jack,
I don't feel like rewatching Ant-Man and the Wasp to find out.
Jack, nobody remembers Ant-Man and the Wasp. And look, guys, we have a bunch of post-credit scenes, aren't you? Excited about these things that you didn't know were in the show until maybe like a week later? And don't worry, they don't come into play much at all besides just being very convenient for the plot.
They do come into play, it's just that you didn't have to see them at all. Most people probably didn't even know there were post-credit scenes because Disney Plus's UI is so terrible that trying to skip through the credits kind of just crashes the entire app. At least that's how it was when I watched on PS4.
Well, I must say that the one that I'm most referencing is not the White Vision one. The White Vision one is fine. If we hadn't spent however many times we spent with S.W.O.R.D, I would have actually enjoyed that twist a little bit more. The one that I'm referring to is Quicksilver captures Monica and puts her in the I call the separate plot room, where she can be away from the plot until she's needed. And then when she's needed, she wasn't needed. And
she didn't do anything.
She literally didn't do anything, though. Because Wanda changes her mind on her own.
Her whole plot in the finale was just she gets kidnapped, sits in a room for a little bit, finds out the anticlimactic answer to who Pietro really is, and then she gets in the way of the bullets, but it turns out she didn't need to get in the way of the bullets because the kids can just stop the bullets themselves.
Whoops.
Then the episode ends. Well, then she goes to space.
No, Jack, you're missing one thing that happened that was one of the most bizarre decisions that felt even more like Disney, like, no, we need to make Monica Rambeau cool. We need to make her important because nobody remembers Captain Marvel. We need people to be excited for Captain Marvel too. So, instead of having WandaVision end in a beautiful scene between Vision and Wanda, where she's just devastated but still thankful for the time that she had with the loved one that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with, she has that great moment, only to then immediately not end the show there, go outside in the little yard where everybody wants to basically kill her and hates her, and then Monica Rambeau has the gall to say, they will never understand what you sacrificed for you. I'm like, who are you, lady? Like, why is the final conversation of Wanda in WandaVision not with the Vision, but with this lady she just talked to?
I don't know. The conversation, although I will say that conversation is kind of the closest they ever got to really establishing the theme of Monica's attempts to get into the Hex and talk to Wanda, paralleling Wanda's grief, because, like, she was like, oh, if I had your powers, I would bring my mom back. And I was like, that was what you were going for this whole time?
But Jack, we could have had all of those scenes with Monica in the Hex.
Yes, if Monica had just never left the Hex and we followed her figuring out what was going on from within the Hex the whole time, that would have been much more interesting than military S.W.O.R.D 2.0.
Also, it would feel a lot less forced, because let's never forget that in episode, I believe, 6, Wanda increases the size of the Hex and Monica runs away. Instead of just having her get sucked in and have her get her powers, she runs away. Only to then immediately in the next episode, for 5 minutes, we waste some time in the fake aerospace engineer. She tries to get into the Hex again with a lunar car. Because, you know, reality altering space bubble and the moon is about the same. She doesn't get into the Hex with the space car, and then she just shoves her face against the thing that can probably kill her. That doesn't feel forced at all.
Yeah, that was like the most pointless scene. Like they were hyping up, ooh, who's the aerospace engineer gonna be? Some person. What? Okay, so it was nobody. What are they gonna do? They're gonna give her a car that doesn't work to get in there. So she's just gonna walk in without it. I'm glad we had that scene.
Everything with Monica and S.W.O.R.D feels like an afterthought, and it's very clear that it was an afterthought, so it must have been.
That's kind of the whole thesis that I kind of want to make with this video, right? It's just, this could have been one of the greatest things the MCU has ever made if they just focused on the personal story of Scarlet Witch and Vision. That's it. But Disney said, no, we have to add the S.W.O.R.D stuff. You have to give Monica Rambeau superpowers. You have to hint at the Skrull storyline that we were hinting at in Far From Home, which I still don't care about. I don't care about the MCU Skrulls. They're boring characters.
We're missing a very important part here, because we got what we wanted. And that was... Wait, no we didn't. Never mind.
We technically
did. We just have to sift through a bunch of unnecessary weed to get to the nice little nugget of gold that they left in there. Because if somebody does a fan edit of just keeping in the themes and getting rid of as much of the S.W.O.R.D plot as possible while still making sense of the finale, this show will be a lot stronger. And I think we have said this enough. Just don't focus on the S.W.O.R.D, guys. Nobody cares about S.W.O.R.D. Just have them in the background and from time to time remind us that they're there. Because if you don't, we'll most likely forget. But it's better than shoving it down our faces as if it's the more important plot in the show. Which is, spoiler alert, it wasn't. It wasn't at all.
I think this is just gonna go to show everyone that Disney does not care about art. They do not care about telling good stories. They care about making money. And they were worried that this show was too risky. So they decided to insert stuff that people were more familiar with from Marvel to avoid being too risky. I just worry that this show will end up being one of the most disposable things the MCU has ever made, and that is really sad because it clearly feels like the people behind it cared, and Disney just ruined it.
Well, they didn't ruin it. Well,
ruined is a strong word. It was, they meddled with it enough to just really dampen it.
Ultron had the same exact problem, which is hilarious because that's where she got introduced. Because Age of Ultron had the same problem of adding a bunch of other plots so you can have future movies have other things going on that they don't want to set up in any other place. So they're like, here is good enough. Let's go. We have some of the highest highs of the MCU, but also some of the lamest, most boring stuff as well. And it's just mixed into a show that could have been a very perfectly encapsulated story, but it just got loose in the shuffle. So if you want to watch WandaVision and the good parts of it, go look the highlights and maybe just do that, and you're probably going to have a much better experience than both me and Jack.
We wouldn't be making this video if it didn't start off so great.
Literally, that's it. If this first 3 episodes were just as mediocre as episode 4, 6, and 7, I wouldn't be here.
We probably wouldn't care enough to make this video.
And now I don't know how to close this, so we're just gonna say, maybe don't buy all the Funko Pops. Maybe 3 or 2 is good. I think we're done talking about WandaVision. You guys have a good day, and go subscribe to Jack. He has more pull than I do. Talks about Doctor Who like a nerd. All right. Bye.
Bye.